You ever have one of those mornings where everything feels a little too peaceful? That's how it started. Sunlight slipping through my kitchen blinds, coffee steaming in my favorite mug, and the quiet hum of suburban normalcy. Then came the sound. It wasn't a lawnmower. It wasn't even a leaf blower. No, it was the shrill, bone-rattling scream of a chainsaw. I nearly spilled my coffee as it echoed down the cul-de-sac like a war cry. I stepped outside, half in my slippers, and that's when I saw her. Karen, HOA board member, neighborhood self-appointed, guardian of aesthetic harmony. She stood at the edge of my yard, hands on hips, directing two landscapers like a general. The problem? They were standing right next to my oak tree. That oak had been there since before I moved in. A sturdy, shade-casting beauty that framed my front yard. I'd hung Christmas lights on it, raked its leaves every fall. It wasn't just a tree. It was a part of the home. "Hey, what's going on?" I shouted, walking over. Karen turned with that tight-lipped smile she probably practiced in the mirror. "Good morning. Don't mind us. HOA-approved maintenance. That tree violates the new height ordinance." "Violates what?" I asked, still half awake. "The view symmetry rule," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the sky, as if that explained anything. "We need uniform canopy lines on this side of the street. It's in the updated bylaws." I stared at her, waiting for a punchline that didn't come. "That's my tree, on my property. You can't just—" She raised a manicured hand, cutting me off. "Actually, I can. It was voted on. You should have read the minutes." The chainsaw roared again, this time biting into bark. A thick limb groaned, then cracked, the sound echoing like a warning shot. I could feel my chest tighten as I watched years of growth fall under their blades. I shouted, but the noise swallowed my words. Karen stood there smiling like she'd just solved world peace. And that's when I saw it. The thickest branch, swaying dangerously toward the street, directly above a car parked by the curb. And not just any car, a black sedan with federal plates. I barely had time to yell before gravity took over. Crash. The world went silent again, except for Karen's tiny gasp. The branch had crushed the hood clean in. Windshield shattered. I turned to her slowly. "You're in so much trouble." Her smile faltered for the first time. The silence after the crash was almost cinematic, like the world had hit pause just to watch. Karen's face drained of color. You could hear the last few leaves flutter down onto the mangled hood of the car, glittering in the morning light like confetti from a bad joke. Then came the shout. "What the hey?" A man burst out of the house across the street. Tall, in a dark suit, phone in hand. He froze when he saw the wreck, then slowly turned toward us. The veins in his neck said everything before his mouth did. "Whose tree was that?" he demanded. Karen stepped forward like she was taking credit for a charity project. "Sir, this was a sanctioned HOA landscaping effort." He cut her off. "You cut down a tree onto a government vehicle?" I didn't move. I just stood there, watching this slow-motion disaster unfold, coffee mug still in hand. "It was my tree," I said finally. "But I didn't cut it down." "She did." I pointed at Karen. Karen gave me a look that could melt paint. "That's not true. The HOA approved it." "On private property?" I asked. She hesitated, just long enough for the man's jaw to tighten. He reached into his jacket, flashed a badge so fast I barely caught the agency name. It was one of those serious ones, federal lettering, the kind that makes everyone instinctively straighten their posture. Karen blinked. You're a federal agent." "Was," he said, voice sharp. "Until about 20 seconds ago when your landscaping crew totaled my car." The landscapers had stopped dead, holding their chainsaws like guilty kids holding slingshots. One of them mumbled, "We just followed orders, ma'am." Karen's lips trembled. I'll call the HOA legal counsel." "Yeah, you should do that," he interrupted, stepping closer, eyes fixed on her. "Because I'm calling the police." She went pale. I took a slow sip of coffee. "You might also want to call your insurance, Karen," I said quietly. The agent was already on his phone, pacing beside the crushed car. Karen turned to me with a hiss. "You're going to regret this." I couldn't help but laugh. You cut down my tree without permission. I think you're the one regretting things right now. A siren wailed in the distance. Faint at first, then growing louder. Karen's eyes darted toward the sound. She whispered almost to herself, "They can't arrest me." "Can they?" The red and blue lights painted the street like a crime scene from a TV show. A few of the neighbors peeked from behind their curtains. You could practically see the gossip networks booting up. Karen stood stiff as a statue on my lawn, clutching her HOA clipboard like a shield. Two officers stepped out of the cruiser. One was young, taking in the scene with wide eyes, crushed federal sedan, shredded tree limbs, and a homeowner, me, still in slippers, holding coffee like this was just Tuesday. The older one took the lead, a veteran type with that weary expression that said he'd seen it all. Though maybe not this. "What happened here?" he asked, voice calm but clipped. I gestured toward the mess. "She," I said, pointing to Karen, "ordered those landscapers to cut down my tree without permission." The tree fell onto that car, which apparently belongs to a federal agent. The officer raised an eyebrow. "That true, ma'am?" Karen adjusted her posture, trying to sound composed. "It was an HOA-sanctioned action, officer. The homeowner was in violation of our community height regulations." The younger cop blinked. "Community what?" Karen sighed dramatically, as if she was tired of explaining logic to peasants. The tree disrupted the visual uniformity of the neighborhood's canopy line. The officer stared at her for a solid 3 seconds. "And you thought that was a good reason to bring down a whole tree?" Without telling the owner, Karen's confidence started to crumble. "It was in the bylaws," I cut in. "The bylaws don't give you permission to destroy private property." The federal agent, still standing by his car, chimed in. "And they sure as hell don't cover damage to government vehicles." The older officer rubbed his temples. "All right, everyone calm down. We're going to need statements." Karen opened her mouth to protest, but he held up a hand. "Ma'am, you might want to save it for the report. You'll need to explain how your HOA authority extends onto someone else's land." That's when the landscapers, who had been quietly trying to edge away, got pulled back in. "Hey," the younger cop called. "You three, don't go anywhere." The taller one spoke up. "We just did what she told us. Said it was HOA property." I looked at Karen. "You really told them that?" Her silence said everything. The officer sighed again, writing notes. "All right, property damage, destruction of private property, possible federal involvement. This is going to be fun." Karen's eyes darted from the notebook to the agent's car, to me. "You don't understand," she said weakly. "I was just enforcing community standards." "Yeah," I muttered. "And now the community's about to enforce them right back." The older cop looked up. "We'll need you all to come down to the station to file full statements." Karen stepped back, clutching her clipboard tighter. "Am I under arrest?" He paused, then looked at the federal agent. "Depends. Are we filing federal property damage, sir?" The agent nodded slowly. "Oh, absolutely." Karen's knees buckled slightly. The clipboard slipped from her hands and hit the ground. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and paperwork. That mix of bureaucracy and tired humanity. Karen sat 2 seats away from me on a hard plastic bench, tapping her foot like a jackhammer. She wouldn't look at me, but every now and then I'd catch her muttering under her breath. Something about bylaws, insurance, and ungrateful residents. I leaned back, trying not to laugh. The irony was almost poetic. A young officer handed me a clipboard. "You're the homeowner, right? Fill this out. Property damage, estimated costs, anything else relevant." I nodded and started writing. Every stroke of the pen felt strangely satisfying. Under description of incident, I wrote, "HOA representative, Karen, last name unknown, ordered unauthorized removal of my privately owned oak tree, resulting in severe property damage and a crushed federal vehicle." When I handed it back, the officer gave a low whistle. "That's quite a sentence." "Yeah," I said, smirking. "It was quite a morning." Across the room, Karen was deep in conversation with another cop. Or more accurately, trying to lecture him about HOA jurisdiction. She even used air quotes. "But the HOA has authority over external appearances," she said, her voice trembling with frustration. "We maintain property values." The officer blinked slowly. "Ma'am, property value doesn't override state law or private ownership." "That's debatable," she snapped. "Not really," he replied. The federal agent walked in just then, still calm, but with that quiet fury that makes you want to clear a path. He looked at Karen, then at the officer, and said, "I've already filed the federal damage report. My department's handling the insurance side, but I want her statement, in writing." Karen went pale. "Wait, you're pressing charges?" He didn't even blink. "You destroyed federal property." She turned to me suddenly desperate. "You can fix this. Tell them it was a misunderstanding, that I was just doing my job." I met her eyes. "Your job is to enforce HOA rules, not play lumberjack on my front lawn." Her expression hardened. "You're going to regret not helping me." I raised an eyebrow. "You've been saying that a lot lately." Before she could fire back, the officer motioned toward her. "All right, ma'am. Interview room 2. Let's get your statement." As she followed him, clipboard clutched like a life raft. I caught the federal agent smirking. "You know," he said quietly, "if she really is on the HOA board, this could get messy for the whole association." "Oh, I know," I said. "I'm counting on it." He chuckled. "You thinking of taking it to civil court?" I took a slow breath, watching Karen disappear behind the frosted glass door. "I wasn't," I said. "But now, yeah, maybe it's time someone pruned the HOA a little." When I got home that evening, the neighborhood was humming with quiet chaos. You could feel it in the air, the charged silence right before a thunderstorm or a scandal. The oak tree, or what was left of it, still lay in pieces across my front yard. The trunk had been sectioned into chunks by the cleanup crew, but the mess was undeniable. Bark, splinters, sawdust, all reminders of the day's madness. And just across the street, Karen's house glowed like a defiant fortress. Porch light on, curtains twitching. As I pulled into my driveway, my neighbor, Steve, strolled over from next door with his usual beer in hand. "So, I heard you made the feds come out today." I gave a tired laugh. "Yeah, not exactly how I planned to spend my morning." He grinned. "Man, I wish I'd recorded it. Half the HOA was buzzing about it by noon. Apparently, Karen tried to tell everyone you assaulted her tree trimmers." I blinked. "What?" He shrugged. "Yeah, then the landscapers showed up on Facebook saying she lied about having a permit. That post has like 100 comments already." I sighed. Of course it does. The truth was spreading fast, and not in her favor. By the next morning, I woke to find 3 HOA board members standing awkwardly on my lawn. Their expressions were equal parts apologetic and terrified. "Mr. Miller," one of them started, "we understand there's been an unfortunate misunderstanding." I raised an eyebrow. "A misunderstanding that involves illegal tree removal, property damage, and a federal report." The man cleared his throat. "Yes, well, we're reviewing Karen's authority in this matter. She may have acted without full board approval." "May have," I repeated. "You think?" Another board member, a woman in her 60s, spoke softly. "We'd like to make this right. The HOA can cover the cost of tree replacement and part of the cleanup." I studied them for a moment. "And Karen?" They exchanged nervous looks. The woman finally said, "There will be a hearing. Internal disciplinary process." "Internal?" I asked. "You mean you're going to let her get away with it?" The silence was answer enough. Before I could reply, a black SUV rolled into the cul-de-sac, the same one that had been towed earlier. The federal agent stepped out, holding a folder. He nodded at me, then at the board members. "Afternoon. I'm just here to deliver documentation. Property damage report, pending charges, and a few requests from my department's legal team." The HOA reps looked like ghosts. "Wait," the man stammered. "Charges? Against the HOA?" The agent smiled faintly. "Against your president. But the HOA's being listed as complicit until you prove otherwise." Karen's curtain fluttered. I could see her shadow freeze. Steve took a slow sip of his beer. "Man," he murmured, "this street just got interesting." And he wasn't wrong, because in that moment, watching the agent hand over the papers, I realized something. This wasn't just about my tree anymore. Karen had started a war she couldn't finish. The community center smelled like coffee, carpet glue, and fake civility. Rows of folding chairs lined the floor, and at the front, a long plastic table held the trembling empire of the HOA board. 5 members, all stiff-backed and overly polite, stared at the crowd like they were about to announce a new world order. And right in the middle sat Karen. Perfect posture, lips pursed, dressed like she was attending court, which, to be fair, was basically what this was. I found a seat in the back, next to Steve, who whispered, $50 says she still thinks she's in charge. I grinned. You're on. The board president, a thin man named Leonard, cleared his throat into the microphone. We're here to discuss the recent incident involving board member Karen and the unauthorized removal of a privately owned tree. Karen's hand shot up immediately. It wasn't unauthorized. I had approval from the landscaping subcommittee. Leonard sighed. Karen, that committee doesn't have authority over private property. Her jaw tightened. The tree violated the height restriction. That restriction applies only to common areas, another board member said quietly. You overstepped. Murmurs rippled through the room. A few neighbors were already recording on their phones. Karen's eyes darted nervously. So now everyone's turning on me? I was maintaining community standards. You should be thanking me. I stood. You cut down my tree without asking. You didn't even knock on my door. She spun toward me, voice rising. You refused to comply with neighborhood guidelines. There weren't any guidelines about trees. That's because you never read the handbook. The room erupted into laughter. Even Leonard couldn't hide a smirk. Karen, he said finally, you not only destroyed someone's property, you caused significant collateral damage. There's a federal case pending. Her voice faltered. The federal thing is exaggerated. Right on cue, the door opened, and the federal agent stepped in. Clipboard in hand, suit sharp, expression unreadable. The murmurs went dead silent. He walked straight to the front. Not exaggerated, he said. The Department of Justice has confirmed the damage claim, and since Ms. Karen acted under HOA authority, we're investigating liability at both the personal and organizational level. Karen's face drained of color. You can't do that. He looked at her evenly. Ma'am, you damaged a federal vehicle? We can absolutely do that.
The board members exchanged panicked glances. Leonard leaned into the mic again. In light of this, information. The board votes to suspend Karen indefinitely pending further legal outcomes. Motion carried, another muttered. Karen shot up from her chair, voice trembling with outrage. You can't suspend me. I am this HOA. Leonard sighed. Not anymore. A few people clapped. Others just watched in stunned silence as Karen stormed out, her heels clicking like gunshots against the linoleum. The federal agent watched her go, then turned to me. If you're planning a civil suit, now's the time. I exhaled slowly, a mix of anger and relief washing over me. Oh, I'm not planning one, I said. I'm filing it tomorrow. Steve elbowed me. Guess you won the bet. I smiled faintly. No, Steve, I think we all did. Outside, the evening sun bled across the cul-de-sac. Golden. Quiet and finally, peaceful. At least for now. By the time my attorney finished drafting the civil suit, the neighborhood was practically humming with rumor. Every dog walker, jogger, and porch sitter had a new version of the story. Karen versus the feds, Treegate. The great HOA meltdown. For once, I didn't bother correcting them. The paperwork was neat, heavy, and satisfying. Property destruction, trespassing, emotional, distress, defamation. Each claim stacked, like dominoes, ready to fall in court. The morning after we filed, my lawyer called. You're going to like this, she said. Karen just lawyered up. Her HOA insurance is refusing to cover her because she acted outside her authority. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. You're kidding. Nope, they're throwing her under the bus. A week later, the letter arrived. Not from Karen, from her lawyer. It was a classic blend of arrogance and desperation. Our client wishes to express regret for the incident in question and seeks an amicable resolution. In exchange for dropping the lawsuit, she will reimburse the cost of the tree and related damages. I read it twice, then laughed out loud. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about accountability. That evening I walked the cul-de-sac. The neighborhood felt lighter somehow. No more early morning emails about mailbox paint shades. No passive-aggressive flyers about non-compliant landscaping. Karen's porch light stayed off for days. Steve waved from across the street. "So, you taking the deal?" I shook my head. "Not a chance." He grinned. "Good, she deserves it." The next HOA meeting was short and painfully awkward. Karen's chair sat empty at the head of the table, her nameplate gone. Leonard, now acting president, cleared his throat. "We're implementing new checks to prevent unilateral actions by any board member." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean no more rogue tree removals?" He smiled weakly. "Something like that."
After the meeting, I found an envelope tucked under my windshield wiper. No return address, just my name in rushed handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "You think you've won, but you've made powerful enemies in this neighborhood. I'll see you in court. K." I stood there for a moment, the street lamp buzzing overhead. It was classic Karen, dramatic, petty, and somehow still convinced she was the victim. I tucked the letter into my jacket, feeling that mix of irritation and dark amusement. "Good," I muttered to myself. "Court's exactly where I want you." Because what Karen didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the federal agents' department had just added her to their own investigation list. And when the government gets involved, even an HOA queen can't spin her way out. It took 6 months for everything to wind its way through the courts. 6 long months of lawyer calls, paperwork, and the occasional sighting of Karen speed-walking past my house, sunglasses on, pretending I didn't exist. But when the day finally came, it was worth every ounce of patience. The courtroom was small, municipal, fluorescent lights echoing every shuffle of paper. Karen sat at the defense table, immaculate as ever, hair pulled so tight it looked painful. Her lawyer whispered something, but she just stared straight ahead, jaw locked. Across from her, the federal agent was present in uniform this time. He nodded politely when he saw me. We weren't exactly friends, but there was a quiet solidarity between us. 2 people who'd been dragged into Karen's kingdom of control. The judge entered, a sharp-eyed woman who looked like she'd seen every flavor of suburban drama. "Let's keep this brief," she said. My lawyer went first, calm, professional, laying out the facts like puzzle pieces. Photos of the destroyed oak, repair estimates, witness statements, and, of course, a printout of Karen's own HOA memo authorizing the tree removal. Karen's lawyer objected twice, weakly, then tried to argue that she was acting in the best interest of the community. The judge leaned forward. "You destroyed a private citizen's property without consent. You trespassed, and your actions caused damage to a government vehicle. Best interest doesn't cover that." Karen's confidence cracked. "But, Your Honor, Stop," the judge said, her tone final. "You're fortunate this isn't being handled at the federal level." Silence. Then the gavel came down.
Karen was ordered to pay full restitution for the car and the tree, plus additional damages for trespassing and distress. The HOA was formally cleared, on the condition that they remove her from the board permanently. The judgment hit like a thunderclap. Karen went pale. Her lawyer packed up in silence. As I walked out of the courtroom, the federal agent caught up to me. "Justice served," he said with a faint grin. "Yeah," I said, breathing out for what felt like the first time in months. Finally, outside, the sky was bright. That crisp, blue kind of morning that makes everything feel clean again. When I got home, I stood where the oak used to be. The stump was gone now, the soil freshly leveled. I'd planted a new tree, a young maple, thin but steady. Its leaves trembled in the breeze like it already knew the story of what came before. And across the street, Karen's house was quiet. The HOA president sign she used to keep on her porch was gone. A for sale notice leaned in the window. Steve wandered over, coffee in hand. So, guess she's moving? I smiled faintly. Yeah, looks like it. He chuckled. You're the first person to ever win against the HOA. They'll tell stories about this one. I looked at the maple, the wind rustling through its leaves. Let them. Just hope the next HOA president knows what boundaries are. Steve smirked. And maybe what gravity does to trees. We both laughed. The sun dipped low, glinting off the leaves. A quiet, golden ending to a suburban war. And for the first time in a long time, my street felt peaceful again.